This was one of the crazier weeks we've had in fantasy football in quite some time. And honestly, there are some great pickups going into week 4, not only for this week, but at the same time for long-term upside. Now, our first player, I'm not going to lie to you, I was very hesitant to buy in on. Tank Dell last week flashed. He went out against the Indianapolis Colts and he had 10 targets. He had 7 receptions. He had 72 receiving yards and the receiving touchdown. I was hesitant to buy in because you looked at the volume for Robert Woods. You looked at the volume for Nico Collins. You looked at the pass attempts for CJ Stroud and you're saying, okay, yeah, great day for Tank Dell if you're just looking at the box score. But underneath this, if you look at the market share numbers in this offense, Tank Dell really isn't commanding a super high percentage of this Houston Texans passing offense, and maybe CJ Stroud comes back down to earth. Well, Tank Dell actually expanded his role both with his snaps as well as his routes run this past week, and you are seeing the continued dominance in terms of his targets in this offense. You actually have Nico Collins fading to the background in this offense, and Tank Dell's the wide receiver with 7 targets, 5 receptions, as well as 145 receiving yards in this game. Now, with Dell, I'm going to be honest with you, it is not necessarily a spot that I think we pick him up and then we go through and we have to start him this week. He definitely has upside, and that's not something I was willing to say previously, because if you go back and look at historical data since the year 2000, we've really never seen a wide receiver as small as Tank Dell move the needle at all in fantasy. But hell, this is the year of the outlier. We're seeing other smaller wide receivers such as Tutu Atwell go out there and make plays. CJ Stroud looks pretty damn good in Houston, and he actually will be a player we're talking about later on in this video. But let's go over to the other wide receiver we want to be looking at right now. Now, Romeo Doubs, another interesting spot, right? Because I think we can safely say, at this point, Romeo Doubs is expanding his role at a rapid rate where you do need to pick him up this next week. But with that being said, if you are looking at Romeo Doubs, is this someone we are immediately starting? Now, one thing that will be exciting to look at will be the PFF graph, where you can see the percentage of the snaps in this Green Bay Packers offense just consistently on the rise for Romeo Doubs over the past 7 weeks or so. But with this being said, what has also happened in this offense? You've had no Christian Watson. You've also had no Aaron Jones as well, leading to inflated targets going in the direction of Romeo Doubs, where he saw 12 this past week for 5 receptions, 73 receiving yards, and the receiving touchdown. Now, I think Romeo Doubs will definitely be a player that we want to pick up, as Jordan Love looks like he's pretty damn good. Not only does Love look like he's good, but Romeo Doubs did flash as a rookie. I just want to be realistic with these guys in Tank Dell and Doubs in that they're worth roster spots, but please don't think that they're going to be must-start players immediately, like a couple other names in this video. Now, going over to the next wide receivers we want to look at. This is going to be a very questionable direction in what you want to go with, because Quentin Johnston and Joshua Palmer are both going to be at the very top of waiver wires this week. Now, if we're going to go through and look at these two wide receivers, I would say Quentin Johnston is the player with more upside. Like, you go through and you look at his prospect profile coming out of TCU. This is a wide receiver that checked pretty much every single box that we wanted to see from a prospect perspective. He broke out as a true freshman. He dominated as a true sophomore. He declares as a true junior. And on top of that, he goes round 1 of the NFL draft to a great offense. So across the board, you really like what you had with Quentin Johnston. However, Johnston just simply has not managed to get on the field through the first 3 weeks so far. Quentin Johnston has had a total of 8 targets in 3 weeks. Quentin Johnston has only had 26 receiving yards through the first 3 weeks. And reports are saying that Joshua Palmer clearly is ahead of Johnston on this depth chart. So I'm sitting here going, okay, well, Joshua Palmer has the role right now. I think that Quentin Johnston has the long-term upside. Do we want to be focusing in on Joshua Palmer? Do we want to be focusing in on Quentin Johnston? I honestly don't exactly know the answer for you. Joshua Palmer did see 7 targets. He saw the receiving touchdown and 66 receiving yards this past week. You look at the snaps, Joshua Palmer did play 40 snaps compared to Quentin Johnston at 16. Now, keep in mind, Mike Williams played the majority of this game, so it's not like we can take this as a one-for-one carryover to what we should expect going forward. But I would be very interested to hear what you have to say. I kind of want to say that I would probably prioritize Quentin Johnston if it's just going to be the last roster spot on this team, right? If it's a really shallow fantasy football format and you're telling me, Mason, I'm not going to be starting any of these guys anytime soon, I just want to be thinking long-term upside here, then you probably go ahead and you take Quentin Johnston. However, if you're going to be looking at getting someone in your starting lineup sometime soon, maybe you had a couple of guys that are currently banged up, maybe you had Mike Williams himself, and you maybe need to start someone over the next few weeks, then at that point, I think you could be going in the direction of Joshua Palmer, as he's the guy that has the role right now. Now, going over to our next rookie wide receiver, this will be someone that's pretty damn exciting, and I was a little nervous because we drafted a lot of Josh Downs earlier this offseason, and reports coming out of Indy were saying, oh yeah, no, Isaiah McKenzie is going to be the slot wide receiver for the Colts. And those reports were flat out wrong. This is the second week now Josh Downs has ran a considerable amount of routes and has been clearly ahead of Isaiah McKenzie on this depth chart. And if you are looking at Josh Downs as a wide receiver that this past week had 12 targets for 8 receptions, 57 receiving yards. Now, he hasn't completely popped off. He hasn't gone through and looked like a week winning wide receiver like Tank Dell did earlier this week. But if you are looking at Josh Downs, he had 12 targets in comparison to Michael Pittman Jr. at 11. Now, of course, I would still rather have Pittman, but Downs is going to be in play for those deeper formats. Now, I will say non-PPR format, you don't want Josh Downs. Non-PPR format, not going to be a super high touchdown scorer. This is going to be a smaller slot wide receiver that you really have to hope that he gets the passing volume in this offense. You're going to be looking at Josh Downs for a full PPR league. But as we go over to our last 2 wide receivers, I want to put a little asterisk on these guys. I think that these are going to be players that we need to continue to monitor before we can just go through and call them must-start options. But at least Adam Thielen is kind of trending in that direction, right? And that if you are looking at Adam Thielen, this was a wide receiver that against the Saints on Monday night last week went out there. He had 54 receiving yards off of 9 targets in the receiving touchdown. Now this week, he has 14 targets with Andy Dalton. He has 145 receiving yards and the receiving touchdown on top of this. Now, DJ Chark looks great as well. Now, it's very interesting if you're looking at these wide receivers. You have the injury to Jonathan Mingo, which essentially cements them as number 1 and number 2 in this offense. And both these guys were dealing with injuries coming into the season. In the case of Adam Thielen, you had him dealing with the ankle. In the case of DJ Chark, you had him dealing with the hamstring. And both these wide receivers are finally fully healthy. And this is when you would expect that they start breaking out and when they start producing. Now, I do want to put an asterisk on it because you did have Andy Dalton in there at quarterback. Not only did you have Andy Dalton in there instead of Bryce Young, but at the same time, ladies and gentlemen, it's a spot where you had 57 total targets going around in this offense. You had about 60 dropbacks for Andy Dalton in this game. Now, if we're going to be realistic with ourselves, should we expect that Andy Dalton has 60 dropbacks? Probably not. That's not going to happen going forward. I do think the volume comes down just a bit, but especially with the Jonathan Mingo injury, these are now guys that you can pick up if you are desperate for a play over the next few weeks, or maybe when the bye weeks come around. Now, let's go over to the exciting players. Let's go pull up the running backs. And as I move my screen over, let me remind you, if you want to go check out any of those underdog pick'ems for tonight's game, you can with the link in the comment section and in the description. My favorite pick'ems this week are going to be the Puka Nacua for more than 64.5 total yards, as well as Mike Evans for more than 4 receptions tonight. If you use promo code FLOCK, you're going to get a 100% deposit match up to $500 with a new account. Plus, you're going to be getting our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers. And then on top of that, you're going to be getting a Joe Burrow special pick'em, more than less than half a passing yard tonight. If he doesn't play, they'll be switching that over to Matthew Stafford. Find that link in the description and the comment section. But Achane is going to be the running back that everybody rushes to go out there and grab. And I'm going to say it, ladies and gentlemen, if you are in a fab league, blow your load. Okay, go out there. Make the dollars rain, okay? This is the guy that we've been waiting for. This is the guy that we are going for. Now, I do want to put a little bit of a warning. I'm not going to give you an exact fab percentage. I hate when people come out to the live streams and go, oh, how much fab should I use on Achane? In reality, it is so dependent on your league format. If you're playing in a 14-team format with 7 to 8 bench spots, I'd say, oh my gosh, the waiver wire is going to be very bare in there. I would go through and I'd blow 95% of our fab on Devon Achane. Whereas if you're going to be playing in a league where maybe it's an 8-team league where you only have 6 bench spots, my take in that is, okay, well, there's going to be a great waiver wire pickup every single week. Maybe we're going to be lowering it down to 30 to 40%. So definitely, please do not be listening to anybody who's giving you generic fab advice. Understand that the size of your league, the player that you are dropping, is going to have a massive impact on the percentage of fab that you should be spending on players off the waiver wire. But like we said, if you're going to spend a lot, this is your guy. A running back that went out there, and I'm going to have to get out the calculator, okay, because I don't want to mess this up. Had 203 rushing yards. He had 30 receiving yards. So 233 total yards. He had the 4 receptions. So we're at 27.3 fantasy points. And then you add on, let's count it out. 1, 2, 3, 4 touchdowns. Devon Achane went out there and dropped over 50 fantasy points this week, ladies and gentlemen. Going forward in this Miami Dolphins offense, I think we can safely say you start as many players as possible. Now, he did split the backfield with Raheem Mostert. And what I'm going to be interested in going forward is 2 weeks from now, when Jeff Wilson Jr. is back in Miami, when he's off the IR, do they turn this into a 3-man running back by committee? What does the workload look like for Mostert, Achane, and Jeff Wilson Jr. when they're all healthy? I don't know the exact answer to that question. If I'm going to be honest with you, I think it's kind of up in the air at this moment. But based off the upside that we've clearly seen in this offense, based off the upside that we've clearly had from Devon Achane, I'm not going to let that make me back away from being aggressive with Achane. It will all work itself out in the end. This is the rookie at the end of the day. He's probably going to be the guy that expands his role in this offense as it goes forward, not necessarily the 31, 32-year-old Raheem Mostert. Now, going over to the Cleveland Brown backfield, obviously, Jerome Ford is rostered in every single league at this point. Someone that I do want to mention briefly will be Kareem Hunt. I understand Kareem Hunt did have a much smaller role than Jerome Ford this past week. I mean, you had Jerome Ford with 10 carries in comparison to Kareem Hunt at 10. In comparison to Kareem Hunt at 5. You had Jerome Ford with 2 receptions in comparison to Kareem Hunt at 2. But nonetheless, yeah, Jerome Ford went out there and almost doubled the amount of touches that he had in comparison to Kareem Hunt. But I'll remind everybody, Kareem Hunt had been on an NFL roster for about 4 days before this game. Cam Akers was already on an NFL roster, got shipped to Minnesota, and that coaching staff went, oh yeah, Akers, I mean, my man, he's not going to be playing this game 4 days with the team. They decided to go through and they decided to make him inactive this week. Whereas if you're looking at what you had with Kareem Hunt in Cleveland, not the case. They went, okay, yeah, you know enough of the offense. We'll make you active. We'll just put you on a snap count. I don't necessarily think this is the true split for this backfield going forward. I think that Kareem Hunt is going to expand his role. Not going to say that he is taking that work directly from Jerome Ford. I do think that he's going to be taking the majority of it from Pierre Strong, who he himself had 6 carries in this backfield. But yes, Kareem Hunt, in my mind, will be not the lead back in Cleveland, but will be a major part of a committee between Ford and Hunt. I think both running backs should be rostered, and Jerome Ford should be viewed as a low-end RB2, and Kareem Hunt potentially as a low-end RB3 until we maybe see this usage change. Now, going over to someone that maybe looks a little bit better than Kareem Hunt, if I'm going to be honest with you. Tajae Spears has had his second week of his NFL career seeing more snaps than Derrick Henry. Week 1 maybe looked like an outlier. Week 1, maybe it was just a super weird game where we're never going to expect that to happen again. But no, week 3 rolls around, and yet again, another game where you have the Tennessee Titans getting blown out, and you have Tajae Spears 27 snaps in comparison to Derrick Henry at 17. Tajae Spears 18 routes run in comparison to Derrick Henry at 6. I'm not saying you pick up Spears and consider starting him anytime soon, but 100% Spears will be a running back that you need to go through. You need to pick up, make sure that he is on your roster. As Derrick Henry is closing in on his age 30 season, there's always a chance that something happens to Derrick Henry. Obviously, not wishing that to happen, just saying it's a possibility. And at the same time, if the Tennessee Titans continue to trend in this direction, would it be the biggest surprise in the world if this is a team that decides, oh, okay, yeah, we have no shot at winning this year. This is a roster that keeps on getting blown out week in and week out. Maybe we go ahead and maybe we actually look to trade away Derrick Henry. We look to get someone else in with this team. I think that is a possibility. Now, going over to some defenses, and we also have a player at the end of the video that I do want to talk about briefly, just telling you, like, honestly, probably a week too early to pick him up. But real quick, the Chiefs defense will be the number one defense this week. I know they're rostered in the majority of leagues. Don't want to talk about it too much. They play Zach Wilson. Pick up the Chiefs if somehow they're out there. Now, if we're going to be looking at a defense that's maybe not rostered in every single league, we are going to be going over to the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals obviously have not played against the Rams, so we haven't got to see what that looks like. But with the Bengals, they're going up against the Tennessee Titans. We've seen the Titans have two complete meltdowns so far this season. Not going to shy away from the possibility that we are about to see a third one. And who knows? I mean, maybe if Burrow is healthy, we can be in a spot where the Titans are trailing by multiple touchdowns and we have a ton of Ryan Tannehill dropbacks that we can attack. Now, I want to talk about one more player here. I think that he is going to be an option that a lot of people are very excited about. A lot of people go out there and run to grab. And I want to admit, I think that he is definitely a talented option, but the situation is just too gross to be too excited here. Marvin Mims is a wide receiver that has another big play, 73 receiving yards this week, 113 the week prior, and Marvin Mims is looking like he is one of the most efficient and one of the most talented wide receivers in this Denver Broncos offense. Now, with that being said, the reason why I'm telling you not to go out there and pick up Marvin Mims this week and instead maybe leave the open roster spot, instead go pick up maybe a player like Tajae Spears, who's an injury away from being a league-winning option, is with Marvin Mims. This is a wide receiver that at the end of the day is in the Denver Broncos offense. You can't find a lot of passing volume here. You are never going to see Courtland Sutton and or Jerry Jeudy be fully removed from this offense. What you are hoping for is you're hoping that Marvin Mims can take the snaps from Brandon Johnson, take the snaps from Little Jordan Humphrey, as Marvin Mims did only have 15 snaps this week. He only ran 11 routes. Now, of course, with these routes, he looks like he may be one of the best wide receivers on the Denver Broncos. But I do think at the end of the day, at best, you're looking at like the wide receiver 1B to Jerry Jeudy's wide receiver 1A, where Courtland Sutton will still be seeing targets. And I don't know if there's enough passing volume in this Denver Broncos offense to be super pumped to go through about Marvin Mims anytime soon. So I feel like you'd be maybe a little bit more of a roster clogger than someone like Tajae Spears, where, like we said, an injury happens, he does turn into a quote-unquote league winner. But I think that's all we have for this video. Of course, if you enjoyed it, please go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And if you want to check out any of those pick'ems on Underdog Fantasy, my favorite going to be the Mike Evans for more than 4 receptions, Puka Nacua for more than 63.5 total yards. You can find that link in the description. You can find it in the comment section. Promo code FLOCK, 100% deposit match up to $500. A Joe Burrow special pick'em, more than less than half a passing yard against the Rams tonight. And if Burrow doesn't play, they will swap that to a Stafford 1. And then last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, get our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers only with promo code FLOCK. But I think that's all I have for you. Really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day. And really hope that we get to see you out with the live stream later tonight.